Welcome to Project Freelance. It is February 2019. How's everyone's new year going so far? I hope it's been well for you guys. This week on Project Freelance, I'm actually taking it all the way back to April 2018. So this podcast kind of got lost in time because my audio vanished. I don't know where my audio went for this, but this episode is with my friend Trevor Walters, who runs and operates Nightfall Management, where he does a lot of A&R work, and he also runs Titan Media, which is where he hosts all of his design work for bands, for artists. So if you guys are in need of some design work, hit up Trevor. I'm going to let him talk in this podcast all about a bunch of different things, how he got started as a designer, how he budgets for when he gets these designs, what he works with as far as Photoshop, Cinema 4D, some of the bands he's done work for. And other than that, it's just a good old podcast with a friend, So I feel like I owe it to Trevor to put this podcast out. So I am here re-recording my audio to fill in the blanks for this. So bear with me. Thank you, Trevor, for your patience. I really, truly appreciate it. And I hope you, the listener, get something out of this. Also, down in the description are a ton of links for you guys if you are in need of some Photoshop work, or if you're in need of After Effects or Adobe Premiere. There's a bunch of discounts right now for you through Adobe. Click that link down below. If you need a class with me, if you would like to book a class with me, photography or video class or freelancing course, whatever it is you need that I can help you out with, head over to justtheletterk.com/booking and you can book an hour-long Skype session with me for $50. Good deal, guys. It's a good deal. Also, if you are interested in decorating your space, head to justtheletterk.com/prints, pick up a photo print, decorate your space. So without further ado, now that I've gone through all the little sponsored notes and messages, this is Trevor Walters talking about A&R and graphic design.
Hi, my name is Trevor Walters. I own and operate Nightfall Management and Titan Media Company. Nightfall Management is my management firm where I kind of do artist development, A&R, kind of do that whole management background thing. With Titan Media, I do all of my graphic design work. I do it with a good friend of mine, Alex. Alex Woods is the other guy behind that. We both, kind of got started as I manage his band Glass Figures, and he's a graphic designer by trade as well. And we just decided to kind of partner up and see what we could do. And he does some video work, and I'm more of a logo kind of guy. And we found that we kind of work really well together on that side. So we decided to do Titan. With Nightfall, I started it out as Cloud Forest as an offshoot of a label that I did. Kind of trying to help artists on that front. And I took off with it by myself and got a partner in it, and that didn't work out for very long. It was under a name called Cloud Forest Management. I don't know, probably about 6 months into it, we took it away and redid everything, and I brought a good friend of mine, my original A&R rep from my old label, Jasmine Jones, and we rebranded it to Nightfall Management, and we just hit our 1 year mark, and we have been doing nothing but uphill since we started, and that's pretty much where we're at now for getting started with it. I just kind of fell into it. I started off doing promotion for bands that I liked. I was I'd repost stuff, and this one band caught on. They were called Varsity, and they're still around. I got to be really good friends with the vocalist. And I was like, hey man, let's try to do some stuff. I heard about this promotion thing. Let's see what we can do here. And I started promoting more bands, and bands were like, hey, after a while, they're like, hey, you do pretty well with this kind of stuff. We need some help with this. Can you help us with that? And I started getting more and more into it, and I started making connections and doing research. And I was like, well, I can do this management thing. This will work. And, I had my falls and I had my good times, and then I learned what I was supposed to do, what I wasn't supposed to do. And it took off without me really thinking so hard on it. It just kind of took off out of nowhere for me. So now I'm here.
So just out of curiosity, how do you come up with the names for these things? Like how for example, did you come up with Nightfall Management? How do you come up with a name, a trademark like that?
For Nightfall, I've always kind of had a thing for, I guess, anything to do with nighttime. And I was literally trying to figure out a name for it for the rebranding at the time, and I just happened to be sitting outside at the time, and it was, sun was going down, and I was like, well, this is a great Nightfall, and it kind of hit me. I was like, well, that's a cool name. And I went and sat down, and I was like, I had written down a bunch of names, and with me being a graphic designer, I was like, let's see what I could do with a logo to make it pop. Let's see what stands out the most to me. And I played around with all the names, and the Nightfall just kept coming back, and what I concepted out for it was it just stood out really hard for me. So I was like, this is it. And I sent it to Jasmine at the time, and Jasmine was like, yeah, I like this. Let's go with this. And that's where that one came from. For Titan Media, I have a thing for like anything Greek. I always have. Ever since I was a kid, I was really into like Greek gods and myths. And Alex and I were playing around with a name, and we were like, let's think of something that stands on top, And we had this idea again with both of us being graphic designers. We were like, let's play around with the whole Atlas holding the world thing as a Titan, and then we scrapped that, and we just went kind of basic, and did this these two hands kind of cupping themselves together and making a flame come out of it. Playing around with, when Prometheus gave humans fire, we were like, what if we were giving everyone else fire? What if we're doing something here where we're, helping these bands, these artists, these companies, with that fire that they need to get it off on their own with branding and logos and something that can help them stand on their own 2 feet. That's where we kind of got that idea, and we put the T in the middle, and we were like, this is it. This is where we need to be. This is exactly what we wanted, and that's literally where the names came from.
So how did you get started in graphic design? Did you do it because you had a need to, design something for like your own project, or did like a band approach you? Did you study like in high school? Like what is your background with graphics?
With me, it was kind of weird. I didn't really start like a lot of people do. I know a lot of people did like, for like their own band or something like that. For me, it was more so like I had done a class in high school, and it was kind of fun, but honestly, I didn't really pay that much attention to it in high school. It was just kind of like an elective, and it was cool to do, and I never really thought much about it after. But with that label that I had started at the time, it was called Life of a Records. I started it with Kalen Stokermans, who's the vocalist of Ascent of Apophis. He also is like almost a world-renowned designer at this point. And he was our head of art, and our video guy, Giles Simon, which you and I have actually worked with him before. He kind of came in with that, and he was, he had all these design ideas, and Kalen had these design ideas, and I was trying to learn and pick up from where they were doing with like the video work, and Kalen with the artwork, and with Kalen being as busy as he was, I was trying to pick up on where if he had a bunch of stuff to do, I could try to help, and I started doing small things like little banners and stuff, and stuff for social media, and I would do research on it. I would YouTube like how to do this, how to do that. Like I would go back through it, and I was like, I remember this from class. I remember how to do this from class, and I actually went to the library and went and got a book on Photoshop, and I started reading from there again. I was like, I remember some of these things, and then after time went on, I started trying to figure out, okay, how are these designers doing all these crazy things? So I researched into it, and I discovered there wasn't just Photoshop. There was Illustrator, there was Cinema 4D, things like that. And I took the time, I went and paid for all those, downloaded them. I was like, let me play around with it, see how this works, And for a while, it was a little bit of a struggle, but, I caught on pretty quickly because I already had that base of, like, I understand the basics. So I would start playing around with it, and then, the bands at the time on that label were like, hey, can you do this for us? We need a little show poster for this. And I was like, yeah, I'll throw something together. And I remember the very first time I ever did something that was really, I guess, my first professional one. I was working with that band Varsity, and they were doing a show with like Moss to Flames. It was, I want to say, Ice Nine Kills, Light Up the Sky, and somebody else was on Make Them Suffer was on it, and they needed it for the Webster Hall for that date. And I was like, yeah, I'll put the promotional little piece on the bottom, and I worked on that, and I was learning fonts at the time, and I was working with Babus, and it's a really kind of like spread out font, so I had to learn kerning and all that by myself, and kept asking for like friends help. I'm like, all right, how does this look? Did I screw up on this? And we finally got it down. I sent it in. They were just like, this is awesome. And I was like, this is cool. I finally got my first step, down for it. And then somebody asked me if I could do a logo. I don't even remember who it was, but they were like, can you do a logo? I was like, I can try. And I started researching on that and learning more, how to do logos. I was, looking that kind of stuff up and seeing how other artists took their approach. And I was like, well, this isn't that far off from stuff I've done before. So I started doing, like, trying to, hand draw stuff and, maybe, like manipulate a piece here, like change up this here and work into trying to, draw stuff. And as time went on, I was getting more direction from friends and, doing my own research, and I finally grew into it, and I'm doing it on my own, without asking help. I'm like, all right, let me take a step out. Let me see how I do on my own without, somebody, giving me guidance. And it worked in my favor because I started learning more about myself, how I see things, how I like to do things. And it kind of gave me that edge that I needed to do it on my own. So I did it on my own for a little while. It was under, I think you saw it at one point. It was under Trevor Walter's graphic design. And then Alex and I sat down and talked and decided to make Titan, because it was just like, what if we did it together? We could offer more services, we could do more bundles and that kind of thing. And it worked in our benefit, so we started getting more and more clients in, and it took out from there. And ever since then, I've just been like nonstop busy. Like every day or so, I'm doing 2 and 3 projects. So
do you have an education background in graphic design then? Did you like go to school and study graphic design specifically?
No, not really. I actually I got a certification for Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, in my senior year. But like that was about it, and it was like a simple, I think it was like 50 questions to pass it, and like I did it like 4 times to make it work. So I finally got the certification for that, but that was it. Like I had no formal education, and I didn't go to any college classes or anything like that. Like everything was literally like trial and error and YouTube and research and reading like a book here and there where I could find it.
How do you go from doing like 1 or 2 projects to doing 2 to 3 a day? How did that grow, and what was that like for you to experience?
Really, it just kind of sort of happened. Like one band would, hit me up, and then like after the work was done, they'd hit up their friends that would need it, and they're like, "Hey, this guy helped us with here. I think he could do really well with this." And I was starting to get those responses back. Hey, my friend said that you did really well with them, and we've, feel that maybe you could do well with us. And more bands like kept coming and coming. I was like, wow, I guess this is gonna keep happening. So as time went on, I was hitting like, I'd get like 1 band a week or 2 bands a week, and then I'd have like 14, 15 bands a month. At my highest point, that was like a lot of workload. And then now I've moved to companies, and recently just worked with a local food shop that's like I don't want to call it fast food, but they're like fast food, but like they're home cooking fast food, and they just wanted a logo done and full branding and a website, and I just did all that. And I've had a booking agency reaching out to me. They want a website done, so I've been working on that lately as well. Working with Ghost Killer Entertainment. I also manage them as well, but I've been working with them on their graphic stuff as well. So like it's been nonstop hardcore. Like every day is as a new trial and error, and pushing myself more than I have been. So
what is your work schedule like? Like when do you have time to do all these projects, or like how do you split your days up to get all this stuff done?
Honestly, it's kind of weird. Like I'll get up and I'll do my regular job, and then I'll come home and I'll work on what I can before I have to like crash for like 4 to 6 hours, and then get up and do it again. And then on my days off, like I just grind nonstop. Like I wake up usually at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm hitting it like that. That's as soon as I wake up, I'm on my computer. I'm doing the designs. I'm freelancing it out. I'm pushing myself on social media and making sure that my name stays out there. It stays fresh in everybody's minds. So like I kind of keep myself on a routine schedule. Like I write everything down. I'm one of those people. Like everything I do is like 8 a.m. Wake up 9 p.m. Make sure you've got this design already kind of scheduled out and you're thinking what you want to do. 10 p.m. eat breakfast while working on this one. So it's a process.
So I have this struggle where if I'm working for hours and hours and hours, I forget to eat. Do you deal with things like this as well? Like, how do you prioritize your needs over your work, or do you?
For sure. I found that everybody is like all of my designer friends, anybody that works on anything like this are always up at late at night. I'm like, so it's not just me. Like I totally forget to eat during the day. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I should eat something now because I'm starving. Literally, I went and heated up like a little instantaneous mac and cheese thing because I happened to remember it was in the freezer when you said I need to eat. I was like, yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you just get so busy working and you're so focused that you just don't eat because you don't care. If food isn't a priority over your work. And I talked about this in the last podcast where I was discussing 10 tips to stay motivated while working at home. And one of those is to have snacks by you, because if you don't have snacks at your desk, you're probably just not going to eat. And I'm sure that you deal with a similar kind of a situation where you're working a ton and you just don't have time to eat and it's not a priority.
See, that's how I am. I'm an assistant manager for Family Dollar, so I'm capping at least 40 hours a week there, if not more. Sometimes during especially holiday rush, I'd hit 60 to 70 hours a week. At one time around, I think it was December, we started finding out that we were closing down, and by January it was over. So I was at capping 75 hours. I hit 81 hours at one point. So I was doing that on top of the graphic design stuff, and then still managing bands, routing tours, getting interviews set up, doing the whole podcast thing with those bands, trying to get playlists for Spotify working for the bands, doing promotional setups for the releases. And I remember I was sleeping maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours at a time, every day. And by the time it finally slowed down, I was like, I'm surprised I'm not dead yet.
And have you ever hit the wall? Have you ever pushed yourself so hard and worked so hard and just been so on your grind that you just put yourself and your health and your mental, even your mental health aside, and you just hit that wall? Have you ever been there?
I think there was one time where I hit a breaking point where it was so much that I was getting contacted every single day. It was 20 bands a day, companies, and YouTube channels that wanted to reach out and partner up, and everybody was blowing my phone up. It was a time where I had 3,000 built up notifications on Facebook. I remember going through, I was like, how does that even happen? I just checked it an hour ago. I was at the point where I was like, I can't keep taking everything. So I finally just kind of shut everything off. And I only contacted the bands on my roster and my two best friends. And that was it. I was like, I've got to have at least a day or two to breathe. Cause I haven't taken a breath in, so long. It's it got to be too much where I was like, let me catch myself real quick before I just stumble and fall flat on my face.
Have you ever had an internship as a graphic designer? Have you ever interned for anybody or anything like that?
I'd applied for an internship at one point with Artery before they shut down, but that never actually panned out. Outside of that, I worked with Stephen McCory. He was the vocalist of Exotype at one point on Rise Records, and he's also a freelance graphic designer. I worked under him for a little while, finding clients. That was, one of my little loopholes getting into designing myself. That got me kind of interested in it outside of just doing it for fun. But I did that, and then I worked with my good friend Chris Cave at Defiled Management for a little while, searching down bands and that kind of thing, and helping him out there. Outside of that, really just kind of doing everything on my own. I've always been that kind of person. I've learned to be kind of self-sufficient for everything. I've had to kind of trust myself because everyone seems to be out for themselves a lot of times. So you're you don't put so much faith in everybody, make sure you have a fallback plan for yourself so you don't look stupid when you reach out too far. So that's kind of where I've been at for the past 5 years.
So let's transition to the music side of things. Talk a little bit about your music background, how you got into music, and where the Nightfall management comes into play.
Music's always been my passion. I've always been that guy. Like, even in high school, like, I was a huge band nerd. I mean, like, band t-shirts every day. I was blaring, Suicide Silence up and down the hallways by the time I was, I don't know, 12, 13, something like that. So, like, it's always been kind of like my crutch, but, a lot of times when you're first starting out, it doesn't pay like you think it's going to. So you have to have that kind of, fallback. Like, what if this doesn't work out? What if it doesn't, make any money that you think it's going to? And like, I'm not a person that's real big on money, but at the same time, like, I know that I have to pay my bills. Like, I have to find a way to make a living so I can, hold my own self down. So, I started working at a real young age. And like, my first job after I got done working with my mom at a moving company, I started working 2 jobs. I was working Speedway and KFC at the same time. And then I quit KFC to go to Ingles for my part-time, and Speedway kept moving me up. Like, within 6 months, I jumped from a cashier to a safety captain to a shift lead to an assistant manager, and then they were moving me to a store manager at the time. So I hadn't even hit 20 at that point. So I just kind of kept working, and I was like, well, this is good to have as a backup, especially to make sure all my bills are paid so I'm not behind on anything. So.
And how do you budget for your jobs? Like, when somebody comes to you and says, like, yo, I need this design, how do you budget for that? Like, how do you set your prices and your fees to account for not only your time, but also your expenses?
Most of my budgeting is, again, for like, anything, like if my bands need backup for something, they're like, hey, we're on tour, we blew out a tire, can you loan us this? Like, I'm usually pretty good for that kind of stuff. Everything else, I usually budget for like new equipment, same way, new mouses, new, hard drives, which you and I talked about that recently. A hard drive of mine fried, and I had to completely redo everything. And stuff like that, like new keyboards, new packages for anything that I might want to do for graphic design stuff, any new like fonts, any new brush kits, anything like that. Like, I try to keep like a set amount of budget, and then also have to budget for everything for Nightfall, for like, paying for our domain for the website, and paying for our emails, and anything like that, and paying off any, debts that we might occur during that time. So,
who are some of your influences? Who are some of the people that you look up to in the industry? Some of their art that you kind of fawn over?
Ooh. Definitely Kalen Stokerman's, him being one of my top, honestly. Not only is he a good friend of mine, but he kind of gave me that direction that I needed. And also, like, his work is just on that level of, like, you see it and like, that dude's got it. Like, there's no rhyme or reason or questioning anything about his work. It's perfect and top notch from top to bottom. Guys like Stephen McCory as well. He's got that niche for that, new age style that I just love. Like, anything like otherworldly, and anything like he does like a lot of stuff that deals with like, future mindsets and stuff like that, and I love that kind of work. Definitely guys like Par Olofsson. I love his work. There's a lot.
And where do you go to get your jobs? Like, do you go on sites like Upwork or Fiverr or Instagram? Like, where are you getting your jobs at?
Honestly, I started really with Facebook, and then, especially moved on outside of that. I really pushed on really hard with Facebook, because I found like a lot of my clients were coming from there. But then I started getting more out of places like Instagram and Twitter, and then I started getting them outside. Like, people would tell me, connect with these people, and then, you go here, like, try to put your work here. And I put out my website, and as soon as my website went live, I mean, like, it was almost instantaneous. Like, I was getting emails like every couple of days, like, hey, I saw your website, really dig your work. What do you charge for this? Like, how can we work together? So, I mean, that's where most of my work comes from these days. So that's that graphic designer's worst nightmare is when like it stops, that those messages stop coming, those emails stop coming, and like the work just dries up, because then you're sitting there like, okay, what do I do now? Like how do I make up for this? Because that's your living. If you've made it your living, then I mean, like you're having to resort to other things. So the more that you can connect with people, the more that you can reach out, that you might catch the eye of somebody that might need that work, then that's more for you. That's better. That keeps your name fresh in somebody's mind. They're like, hey, this guy does really good work, I'd like to hit him up some point. So.
And where can people find your stuff? Like Instagram, Facebook, like what social media are you on where people can find you?
Oh man, I'm on pretty much everything at this point. You can find me on Facebook. It's under my full name, Trevor M. Walters. For Instagram and Twitter, it's Trevor M. Walters. Same way with I think if I remember right, my Snapchat is Walters Trevor 0. I don't actually look at the username much anymore, but I'm there. Also for my email, you can email me at trevor@nightfallmanagement.com. I'm pretty responsive to that kind of thing, so if you need me, I'm there. You can find me on the web. Anywhere of those links, you can find the links to the website, and they'll take you directly to me.
And what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Ooh, don't be so ahead of myself. Don't be so full of myself. When I started, I was like, this is super easy. Like this is going to be awesome, and like I can do it like quick 5 seconds, and then I was jumping, and I'm like, wow, this was, I look back at like, older work, and I'm like, man, I really wish I would have done like I do now and take my time, actually put the real true effort into it. Somebody's paying you for a job, they don't want just something like this, just half-assed. They want something, real work. They want you to actually put the effort into it and show, that you wanted to work for this, and then you take pride in your work, so when you turn it in, you don't just go, wow, I that's some crappy work and my name's attached to it. Like you can go, man, I really love that work. You can always do better, but I always try to push myself as much as I can, so when I turn it in, I'm like, yeah, man, I love this. This is where like I really did well on this. So that's where I stand on it.
What are your goals for this year? Like, what do you hope to accomplish? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations for this year?
Outside of that, I would love to travel to other countries and maybe like work with some new labels, especially. Like I would love to go again, like Kalen went to a Nuclear Blast when we first started our old label and did an internship there, and he came back and was just so excited about it. And I would love to do something like that. Go work with Nuclear Blast, maybe go work with Sharp Tone, maybe work with even Rise or Fearless or something like that. I would love to work with Warner Brothers. Outside of that, just to travel. I would love to go to somewhere like Italy. Like the architecture there is just, it's breathtaking. Yeah, so do something like that. Maybe go on some random private island and just hang out for a month, just to get away, relax. Get my bearings again, and I think that would be kind of cool.
All right, well, thank you for taking the time to be on this podcast, man. I had a really good time talking to you, and it's always a pleasure.
No, I appreciate it. I love being on it.
Well, guys, that was Trevor Walters talking to you a little bit about A&R, graphic design work. What do you do? Let me know in the comments. Give this podcast some feedback. Give it 5 stars. Give it 6 stars. Give it however many stars you want to give it. Give it a review so we can reach other listeners just like you that might need to hear podcasts like this one. Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate it. Thank you to all the listeners. Here's to 2019 being a badass year for you. I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to see your projects. Put them on Instagram and Twitter. Use the hashtag Project Freelance so I can see what you've been up to. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next week on this podcast. This is Kay Anagonio, your host of Project Freelance.